What is up, gang? It is market review time. We are going to look at the state of the Denver real estate market, where it is, but really where it's going, because we are once again at an interesting time of year here in November, just past the election. Election is a big thing people were looking at as far as real estate, slowing down ahead of that. Now, what's going to happen after it? This is the simple and dirty broadcast, no fancy edits. I just get on here and talk. I usually do use the fancy camera for this. I'm just using the webcam this time because it's a little easier. And my theory is nobody really cares other than me for these, because a lot of the time, I'm big now, but usually I'm just down here. We're looking at Megan Aller and her stats and some articles and stuff like that. So that's what I'm going to go with. If you care, let me know. Comment. Say, Sam, this looks like crap. What are you doing? Take yourself seriously. Something like that. And I'll change. I will change. If you care about something else and you're mad and you leave a mad comment, I might change. I might not. Depends. But this, I want your input. Let me know. So I'll keep moving myself around, somewhat anxiety ridden like I do, because there's never a great, now I'm over there, and then there's not a great spot for it. But what we're looking at here is Megan Aller's market review. This is for the previous week to when I'm recording this, October 30th through November 6th. That's the most recent data that's out there. If you followed this channel before, you have seen a market review using her data. It's the best. She's the first American title rep, and she actually just presented in person to my real estate group, the Alchemy group, yesterday, 2 days ago. And I'll share a little bit from that, some tidbits there too that weren't included in this data that I think is interesting as far as what's going on with Denver real estate, specifically the differences between attached and detached properties. So single family residences and condos and townhomes and the like. So we're going to look at all that, and we're going to look at this weekly highlight reel here. There's a lot of text, but I just wanted to, there we go. I'm moving myself already. I wanted to point out a few things. Okay. So when we look at this, we look at things week to week in this report, and then also year to year. And the year to year stuff is where we can really see the trends come out. So basically, odds of selling is something we're looking at. Active listings we look at too. But compared to 1 year ago, new listings were nearly flat. So new listings, how many new listings are coming on the market? That was about 2%, nearly flat. But coming soon listings declined week over week. That means listings they get entered into coming soon status. They're about to be new listings. They're usually a week away. These coming soon listings were up 31%. Year over year. That's a big deal. Now, inventory is way up, and we'll talk about that too. Inventory is higher than it has been in the Denver metro and any time in the last 11 years. Okay, so there's a lot of inventory, but right now there's looking to be some more new units coming on the market, which for this time of year is a little unique. Pending transactions were down from last weekend, week over week, with 740 listings going under contract. Months of supply of inventory was 3.2 months, and that is 39.2, 40% higher months of supply, meaning how many homes are on the market, 40% higher than a year ago. And that's something I want to dig into here too. Showing activity was down. Okay, let's look at the graphs. So this is, first of all, because we're going to segment it by price a little bit at the end, just to give you an idea of where things are getting a little quirky and why. But this is just all prices. I'm going to kind of cruise through this stuff and get to our big graph here. So this is basically all prices. I'm actually going to make this smaller. There we go, because you don't really need to see me that big. This is what I really like to look at is the average daily active count. Okay, so this blue line and this black line, months supply of inventory, predictive months of supply, because that factors in pending inventory too. And what you're seeing is, we talked about this before, so I won't drone on about it, but you're seeing seasonality here. Okay, back in 2022 when things were really, really hot, during the first half of the year, that's our strongest selling season. So things were much lower as far as inventory. Many more new homes coming on the market, but lower inventory overall because those homes were being sold. Really between February and May, that's the prime selling season here in the Denver metro. And then the second half of the year, things went way up and inventory spiked. That in 22 had to do with interest rates jumping as well. But then you're seeing the normal rhythm of things. This over here, this part is 2020 to 2022. That was COVID time. So that was not normal rhythm, okay? That was very special, weird, super hot seller's market. So inventory never really came up that much. But this is more a normal rhythm. But you see, okay, first half of the year lower, second half of the year inventory comes up. Then a bunch of those get taken off the market for the holidays, and we move into our spring selling season, inventory goes lower. Then it comes back up. Again, the same thing happening. But what you're seeing here is in 2024. We've talked about this on previous episodes of the market update. So I won't go into it that much, but you're seeing more inventory happen right now. We are at 3.2 months of supply, right? 3.2, yeah, predictive months of supply. Overall, in all counties in the Denver metro, that's a lot. Still, technically, a seller's market. It doesn't get to balance and then move towards buyers until we get to 6 months of supply, which seems crazy. But so still a seller's market, but much more buyer friendly than it has been in a decade. And so we never really have 6 months or more in the Denver metro. It's a pretty solid seller's market, at least over the last 20 years. Crazy things happen. It can go into buyer's market a little bit, but this is what we're going to call a buyer-friendly market, okay? So coming soons are up. That's year over year. Average daily active, we got 50% more units on the market than we did the same time last year. So that is huge. That's big. New listings, not really doing anything. Part of it, like I said, we just had the election. I'm recording this on Thursday. The election was Tuesday, I want to say. A lot of people were waiting. That's why it makes sense to me that there was more coming soon activity, 31% on that. They're like, I don't want to list the weekend before the election. There was Halloween happening. There was just some weird stuff going on. People don't want to list around that time. But also fewer and fewer people list as we get deeper into the calendar, as we get more towards Thanksgiving and Christmas, really Halloween, Thanksgiving, Christmas. Anytime after the 4th of July, that's when this graph starts going up and things start really, even before that, but especially things start slowing down. And then this last part of the year, in the winter, things really slow down. People pull their homes off for the holidays. Not as many buyers are out. So if you're a buyer, that's a great opportunity because there is so much inventory on the market. And there are fewer buyers out. Fewer new people listing too, but fewer buyers out. But this new pop of coming soon activity really makes me think that we may have something that's a little different from what it was last year in terms of more people getting ready to sell. I don't know if it's, okay, hey, we just wanted to get through the election, even though this is from last week, but it is coming soon, thinking that they would list this week. I don't know. It will be interesting to see what happens. Really, when you look into, because people always say, well, an election coming up, it's an election year that's going to make things weird economically, whether that's in real estate or anything else. What does that mean? At least in terms of real estate, at least locally, it means that people clam up prior to the election, leading into it. After the election, we'll have to see what happens, but at least from now into the spring, unless something crazy happens, we can expect to see things return to more of a normal market cycle. Okay, this is looking at odds of selling. Week by week, the odds of selling are down to 35%. Okay, that's just if you list a property, what's the odds based on the averages that it'll sell within the first month? 35% is much lower than we've seen because there is so much inventory on the market. This right here is, I'm going to make this a little smaller actually. Yeah, so we can see more in one. Okay, great job, Sam. So we can see more in the frame. Okay, so this is showings per listing. This just shows you how active we are. We're at 1.1 showing per listing right now. It's not a lot. That is down. It's still down 29% from a year ago. You know, 1.1 versus 1.4, what's the difference there? I mean, it's significant, but showings per listing, that's per week, about one showing. So if you listed a property and you're like, why am I not getting any showings? Why am I only getting 2 or 3 showings a week? That's actually much better than average. So you might be doing okay. And that's why if you're a seller, and I've said this before, but at a time like this, my suggestion to you is to not panic. You have to have a plan going into it. And you got to make sure you have a plan and you understand these data, preferably before you list with your real estate professional. But once you're on the market, it's important to stick to that plan and not panic. Oh, I'm not getting enough showings. We need to drop the price. Maybe there are some indicators that can say that you should drop the price, or maybe you just haven't had the time because the market's slower to get enough buyers through there. How many buyers do we need to get through there? Well, on average, it takes 15 showings to get to one contract. That's on average. Do some quick math here. That's about 15 weeks. on the market. I know you don't want to hear it. And it's not always 15 weeks too. If your place is priced right, presented well, desirable in a few different ways, it can and probably will sell faster than that. Those are our averages right there. But then median, when we look at median days on market, that's 32 right now. It's the same as it was week over week, and that's up 18% year over year. So you're seeing other signs of a slower market. It is a slow market right now. If you are a buyer, it's a good time to get out there. When we're looking at these things, it is a great time to, if you're thinking about buying, buyers are getting great deals right now. You've heard me say this for probably 6 months, but it remains true. So I'll say it again. Seller concessions are happening at a much higher rate than they will happen next spring. Listing price drops are happening at a very high rate. You're able to get potentially both those things right now if you're a buyer because of how slow it is. Speaking of price drops, the percentage of properties that had a decrease in price, at least one price drop, 52%. Over half of the total properties listed in the 7-county Denver metro area had at least one price reduction. That's what's going on out there right now. And so I talked about if you are a seller, if this is why don't panic, maybe you do need to do a price reduction. That's a conversation to have with your real estate agent. If you don't have one, like I always say, I would love to chat with you about that. The team and I focus on listing properties, helping buyers at a very, very high level. If you need anything on that, reach out. My contact information is all over. I really try to take, as you may guess, a data-based approach here. And so there are things where it's time to drop the price, especially if we knew we were trying. You don't want to do this, but if we knew we were kind of listing on the high side to begin with, and then we go 2 weeks and we have no showings, we're high. It's time to drop the price. But if we go 2 weeks, we think we're priced right based on the comps, based on all these other things, and we only have 4 or 5 showings over those 2 weeks, it may not be time to drop the price yet. We may just need to be patient. If you haven't listed yet, and you don't have to list right now, right? Some people do. They need to list their home right now. But if you haven't and you don't have to list, wait. That's what I'm telling everybody. Wait till spring. And what does spring mean? Let's reevaluate after the first of the year, because at that point, it's probably time to start making preparations, time to start looking. This year in 2024, the height of the spring market happened sooner than we'd expected. It happened really in March into April, rather than May into June. And so that means these places were listed in February or January, that sold in March and April. And so we want to be making sure we're not missing it and reading those tea leaves that are presenting themselves after the new year. So after January 1st is a good time to get started. Doesn't mean you have to list right then. There's a whole lot that goes into it, but that's a good time to start looking at it. If you can wait as a seller, and I said this last time, but I would wait. That's what I'm advising folks to do. Now, over half of properties listed had at least one price reduction. The amount of the reduction is about 6% on average, and that equates to about $42,000. Another thing too, if you're a seller, okay, we've decided it's time to do a price reduction. What should we do? Depends on the price point, number one, but this is a good barometer for what others are doing. This is a good barometer for what the market is saying. If you have a $700,000 house, $800,000 house, and you want to do a $5,000 price reduction, don't waste your time. Don't do it. Why? It's annoying. When you see a $5,000 price reduction as a consumer, what do you say? You're like, that's good. This is a better deal now. You go, no, they're just trying to do this so they can get back in the feed and it says reduced and it's nothing. It's a tiny percentage of the actual price. We should be talking about at that price point, $25,000, $50,000. Above $1 million, we're talking $50,000 to $100,000, those sorts of things. It is much better to, and this is based on what we see in the market, it is much better to wait and do one significant price reduction rather than a few insignificant price reductions. You may think the few multiple price reductions will look better. It doesn't. It starts to look more desperate, especially when there are those little price reductions. People aren't stupid. They know what we're doing when we're doing those things. So, okay, here's where things get interesting, and I want to stratify it out by price point a little bit because there are differences in the markets in different price points. Market's different based on area of town. It's based on home type, and then it's different based on price point. Usually, especially with affordability right now, this price point around and below $500,000 is the hottest. It's selling the fastest by far, right? Because more people can afford it. It makes sense. It makes up 27% of our inventory, which is not insignificant. but we'll see what's going on. I'm going to compare it to a higher price point and then explain, based on what Megan Aller told us earlier this week, why that's happening. Okay. And it's kind of interesting. So you're looking at month supply is actually a little bit higher at this price point than it is at the all prices at large, which is interesting. It's typically lower, and you're looking at just the way things have gone up versus. So when we're looking at typical, you're seeing a bigger difference between typical at this up to $500,000 price than what's happening right now. Big jump. We're talking about doubled. Year over year, average daily active is up 82%. Year over year inventory is up 82%. Crazy. Expired inventory, we can talk about that. There's actually a lot of homes expiring now, but there's enough inventory on the market to absorb that. So it's not making a huge difference. But pending transactions are down. Closed transactions are actually up quite a bit year over year. There's just so much more on the market. Okay, odds of selling. That's right around where the odds of selling at large for the full data set is too. Usually this is much higher, much hotter. Showings per listing, actually a little lower, 0.1 lower, but still lower. Interesting. That is down 49%. That's down 50% from a year ago at the same time. And then showings contracts 14. You're seeing what's very similar numbers, almost mirroring. Average days on market or median days on market is 28. It's actually a little lower. And then you have price reductions, 50%, actually slightly fewer of these properties had a price reduction. 50%, that's huge at this price point. Up to $500,000, if you're looking for a house, and this is the key that we're going to get into here, but if you're looking for a house up to 500 grand, those are few and far between, anything that's livable. That's why it's typically such a hot price point. Comparing that to 1 million to 1.5 million, okay? Just for fun, let's do that. Because this is usually a slower moving price point because the buyer pool is smaller. Prices are going up, so it's getting to be more normal than it used to be when $1 million house used to seem like the epitome of luxury. That has changed in our Denver metro. Months of supply here is higher. Is it 4 months of supply? Higher, but not that much higher. Okay, and if you're looking at the graphs here, we're looking at these charts, right? This is, and I can draw on this thing too. Yeah, I'll figure out the tools next time, but they're not showing up. This is, we're looking at typical when we saw the lower price point, right? That was jumping way up from typical versus we're going to this higher price point. We're seeing a typical, it's really not much higher in terms of average inventory. It's up 39%, average daily active, new listings up 13%, but that is much more normal for this time of year at this price point. Okay, odds of selling at 32%, almost mirrored what it is under 500,000. Showings per listing actually slightly higher. Showings to contracts, a few more, 18 rather than 14 or 15. Days on market, slightly higher, but not a huge difference. Again, you're seeing it a little higher up here, but more typical. And then only 44% had a price reduction. So that's actually lower, which is interesting. The reason for this, why is this happening? Well, and this is what Megan explained to us because she pulled this data that's not reflected here, but she did pull and show us in this meeting I'm talking about. At this price point up here, okay, not this one, at the under $500,000, the typical, just a golden goose of Denver real estate to be able to get something in there. Well, it's something like 70 to 80% of the properties in this price point are, you guessed it, attached. Townhome or condos. What do we know about condos right now? They're selling I could pull those data up for you too. I won't bore you with the whole thing. TLDR, they're selling way slower. They're having more price reductions. It is harder to find. Just fewer single family homes end up in this price range right now. Even between 500 and 600 to find a solid single family home is getting harder and harder. So under 500, the vast majority of these properties are attached. So townhomes are selling a little slower. Condos are selling much slower. Number one, people are still wanting more space with the work from home, office, and the yard. Number two, HOAs have just taken a beating over the last year or two. Taxes have gone up. Insurance premiums in many cases have doubled. And when we're talking about big high-rise buildings or just large multi-unit buildings, that's huge. We have people, you got a 1-2 bedroom condo, right? That costs $350,000, something like that. Let's say we're talking about you went from $350 in HOA a month to $800. This is real. This is happening all over the place right now. So now your monthly HOA fees are $800 at this much lower price point, more starter home category of property. And imagine, I mean, just imagine buying a condo right now and having to pay those HOA fees. It would maybe, I mean, sometimes you're getting amenities for it, sometimes you're not. That drastically affects what you can afford and what you want to pay. Do you want to pay that much every month? And that's why this segment of homes is moving much slower relative to the rest of the market than it typically does. If you are interested in condos, I don't, some people are saying, I've heard people say, don't buy a condo in Denver at all right now. I don't have that same opinion because I think there's actually a lot of opportunity here. But I do think it's important to make sure you're focusing on the right property and not something that's oversaturated and going to continue to get more saturated as these new builds keep coming online, especially downtown. If you want to have that longer conversation, like I said, I'm happy to have it with you. We can guide you in the right direction. Maybe a condo is right for you, maybe not. But moral of the story, with all this, guys, if you're a buyer right now, I mean, this is just, it's prime time to get out there. What's going to happen in the spring? It's going to contract. None of us can say how much or whatever, but it's going to contract more. It's going to be more competitive. This is a time to go. If you're a seller, this is, I mean, it's dumping snow outside as I'm shooting this right now. So I can't imagine listing your home for sale. If you have to, great. If not, hunker down, have some hot chocolate, make some beef shank that hopefully I'm going to be making this weekend. Enjoy the winter. Get yourself in order. Do any of those home projects lingering that you need to do. We could talk about pre-inspections. We could talk about all these things to do to get your home in order to be ready to list after the first of the year, whenever that is. And, it's important to make sure, even as the market gets stronger, and I do want you hitting the meat of the market when you're selling to maximize the amount of money you're going to make and minimize the amount of time you have to be on the market, because that's a stress too. But even in a stronger market, listen, back in 21, or really 22, you could sell a house without doing much. You could sell a poorly presented, crappy photographed house that wasn't staged. You could sell it, and you'd probably sell it for a good chunk of change. You wouldn't sell it for as much as you would have had you done it the right way. That was kind of the secret, but that was hard to show people when homes were just selling, getting 5, 6, 7, 9 offers the first weekend regardless. Now things have changed. Now you got to be ready. And there's a whole bunch of things you can do as a seller and your agent can do as an agent to give you the edge, to make sure that you are getting as much money as you can for this investment. And that's very, very important to most people. Understandably, it's very important to me that happens when I work with you, because this is a big asset. You're selling a house how many times in your lifetime? Few, some people more, but some people a handful, 2, 3. It's important to maximize. So hopefully this was helpful. And like I said, if you have any questions, please reach out. And if you have opinions on my softer focus on the face due to the lower quality webcam, please let me know. Otherwise, you're the best. And I will see you soon.